My name is Clay Williams, and this is People Talks, presented by Canal Pursuit Productions. The idea behind People Talks is that everyone has a story, and everyone's story has value. People Talks is a variety of people with lived experience and people working in the fitness and mental health fields. It's a kind of a special episode today of People Talks as we're warming up to the 9th annual Canal Pursuit for Mental Health run. We'll be honoring Canada's first responders and military. And today's guest is Stuart Smith. Stuart is Assistant Chief of Operations with the City of Abbotsford Fire Rescue Service. Born and raised in Saskatchewan, where sports played a huge part of his life, Stuart eventually focused on hockey, playing Junior A with the Weyburn Red Wings and collegiate level at the University of Regina. Following his playing days, Stuart began working with youth and families in various community and school-based programs with a focus on mental health and addiction-related issues. Before beginning a career in the fire service, he's currently an Assistant Chief of Operations with the Abbotsford Fire Rescue Service with 20 years as an emergency responder in the community. Stuart has extensive experience with nonprofit organizations, serving on the executive board of the Abbotsford Firefighters Burn Fund for 20 years and the Chilliwack Spartan Swim Club for 5 years. In 2019, he received a Fire Services Exemplary Service Medal awarded by the Governor General of Canada following the completion of 20 years of exemplary service characterized by good conduct, industry, and efficiency. Welcome to People Talk, Stuart.
Well, thank you, Clay. Thanks for having me on here. I'm excited about this, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
All right. I met Stuart online. I don't think I've met you face to face yet, but we've known each other for a year and a half or so, something like that, when we were planning another event, across Canada skate that's hockey related and mental health related. And there may be more news on that in the future. We'll see about that. But I thought of Stuart as soon as we started talking about honoring our first responders and firefighters. Fire departments are going to be on our list. We've dedicated one day to look at that. So just a little bit of history, I guess, on you and Abbotsford. So you've been with the Abbotsford Fire Department for like 23 years. I did a little research. 8 stations, right?
Yeah. We have. So back it up a little bit. Back in 1999, I started with Abbotsford Fire as a paid on call or as an auxiliary firefighter, and then about a year and a half later, I got on full time with the department, working in this community since that time. It's been an honor. Abbotsford has 8 stations, and 5 of those are staffed with full-time firefighter response, and then it's supplemented or complemented by a paid on call level of service as well. So we have quite a wide area that we cover. If you know the lower mainland at all, it's from Chilliwack to Langley, and from the U.S. border to the Fraser River. And so it's quite an expansive area, and we have a urban core surrounded by a very large rural area, and our paid on call members respond out into some of the rural areas, and then we have a couple of the stations within the city limits as well that have paid on call members that respond and assist with the career members.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask about the urban and rural. So it's quite a large rural area as well that's covered, right? In your role as Chief of Operations, what do you do?
So yeah, well, I would imagine maybe some of the crews that wonder that as well. I moved into the Assistant Chief of Operations position in September of 21. And it was not necessarily something that I envisioned doing. I enjoyed my time on the, in the suppression side and then working on the trucks. There was an opportunity though to move into another role, a little bit more of a leadership role, overseeing sort of larger projects and bigger things. When you're responsible for a crew as an officer on a truck, you have yourself and 3 others, and as incidents arise, you would have other trucks involved. So moving into the assistant chief of operations, I oversaw 2 shifts. So the entire shifts, from the staffing to resource management, and then as incidents occurred, bringing in more resources that were required, or if need be, managing the rest of the city with other calls that were going on. Just because one call comes in doesn't mean that there isn't 3 or 4 others going out there. So sometimes just managing the deployment of those other trucks or bringing in other trucks. We do have mutual aid with other cities that we at times have to call on other cities to come and assist us depending on the size of the incident. That's from the emergency response side. And then there's program development and basically maintenance of the people as well. And in my move into this position, that was one of my main focuses and discussions when I was going through the interview process, is that I wanted to ensure that we maintained our people and made sure that their mental health was looked after, and having a connection with all of those people coming from the trucks and coming up through the ranks. I know those people, and so it was important for me to make sure that any programs that I was hopefully getting involved with, or if I saw an opportunity to expand and to create positive opportunities for people to work on their mental health, I was going to make sure that was part of my plan as well. So yeah, it's been interesting and a steep learning curve, and a lot of fun at the same time.
Yeah, and you're still connected with all the guys you've worked with for years, right?
Yeah, the firefighters and the crews, that was part of going into this role that I was really interested in. I was able to maintain that connection with the crews and overseeing 2 of the shifts, and then the other person that was in the other assistant chief operations kind of oversaw the other 2 shifts. So it allowed me to maintain that connection with the people that I had grown up in the service with, and have those connections with.
Yeah. Yeah, and Abbotsford over the past couple of years has had its share of emergency situations, right? I think when we first started talking was during the heat wave of 2021. And I think since then there's been flooding and fires and like Old Testament stuff going on in Abbotsford.
Yeah, everything short of the locusts at this point, which touch wood that it was. I think a lot of areas are experiencing a lot of different weather related issues, and call volume for us has been on the rise. It's more than doubled in the last 6 or 7 years. Some of it is some mental health related stuff, some opioid crisis stuff going on, but then it's also the growth of the city. We in the lower mainland here, we're just 45 minutes east of Vancouver. Housing prices are a little bit less out here, so you do have people that are moving out into this area, even though they may be working in Vancouver. It's just more affordable to live. So population rises, and motor vehicle accidents increase, and medical responses increase, and fire situations increase. And then you add in the weather. It went from super hot to super wet in a matter of months in 21 there. And it was well, people were asking, because we do have the rural and the urban component to the city. When I walked out of my home, I really didn't see the flooding. just based on where I lived. But when you went east and I was in the middle of it, you could see the devastation and destruction that was going on, and watching the different organizations come together, and the different levels of government coming together. And it's always, it feels good, not when you're in the middle of it, but afterwards, to look around and see how people came together to help out others. You tend to put your differences aside and you just go get the job done and figure things out later sometimes. Sometimes if it's funding, or sometimes it's just how we approach something. Maybe we could do something a little bit different the next time. And so there's always an opportunity for growth on that standpoint. But it is heartwarming when you see, you know, significant events, not just what we had here in Abbotsford, but you can see that around the world in different places where a significant event happens, and how the way people come together and look out for one another. And that's in the initial response, and you hope that there is ongoing support for those people, whether it be financial or you know, somebody that's lost their entire farm to a flood and all of the livestock that went with it. That takes its toll on them mentally as well. And so
for sure.
I think we're seeing more and more of that. And I think we're trying to do more and more in an effort to address those issues as they come up.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to a question about what you do, what your service does. So for the majority of people who only know that firefighters drive a red truck, what is a common call, or what are the most common calls that you get, or requests for service? Just so we've got an idea of what you kind of do on a day-to-day basis. Without going through any triggers, we recognize that we expect you guys to run towards things that we need to run away from.
Yeah, right? You're right. I mean, we see things on a regular basis that most people shouldn't even see once. And so we do need to make sure that we're looking after ourselves, and what the type of calls that we go to. I'll speak generally, not necessarily specific to Abbotsford, but I think fire services across Canada and across North America would probably be similar in statistics and numbers. And each municipality or each department will respond a little bit differently based on the needs of their community, and what the direction of the council or the politicians and the level of response that they want. We do work closely with our BC ambulance service from the medical side. And I would say that probably about 60% of our calls are medically related. We're going in and we may be first on scene, and our level of training takes us to a certain point, but the paramedics are trained significantly better into a higher standard than we are. And the moment they arrive on scene, I was always one of the happiest people say, oh good, you know, they're on scene, and then we would work together with them. So about 60% of our calls would be some type of medically related call. You know, next would be about 20 to 25% would be fire related, and that would be everything from an actual structure fire, vehicle fire, a fire in the wildland interface, like it could be in a forested area of the community, along with fire alarms, those type of things. So if maybe somebody burnt something on the stove and there isn't actually a fire, but it's activated the smoke alarm in the apartment building. So those would take up about another 20 to 25% of our call volume. And then after that, you have motor vehicle incidents that we respond to. And in most municipalities, you would respond with the ambulance and police as well.
Right.
And people may wonder, well, how come so many services are going to a simple car accident? Well, nothing is simple. And it may be simple when we get there, but when the initial 911 call comes in, you don't really know. You have somebody that's just been in an accident that's phoned 911 and said,
Mhm.
I've been in a crash, I need help, and I think my friend is hurt, and it turns out that they weren't hurt as much as I thought. But the initial response is to get those services going there. Police will look after the any legal side of the incident. We are there if there is entrapment, if one of the people is trapped in the vehicle. We'll look after some scene safety stuff,
Mhm.
and then we'll also assist with the medical stuff. And BC Ambulance would do the transport to the patient.
Mhm.
So those services come together on NVI, and that would probably take up another 5 to 10% of our call volume.
Mhm.
And then you're looking at 5 to 10% could be a hazmat, hazardous materials call. Somebody has spilled something. There's been some fuel leaked out. There's the smell of CO in a home, or not the smell of CO, but the CO detector is going off. It could be the smell of natural gas in the area. So that would take up kind of the last percentages of the response that we do to. I'm saying this is what Abbotsford is, but I would say it's probably fairly similar across municipalities throughout Canada and United States as well.
Right. Have you seen the effects of the pandemic? So there's kind of two questions here. Have you seen a change in what calls you get during the pandemic or after? Let's say we're after the pandemic already. We're kind of in the wind down. And then the next question: have you seen any difference in your staff, let's say, without giving anything away, with everyone recognizing that it's pretty well known that everyone has seen a little bit higher stress levels through the pandemic because of all of the uncertainty? Has that affected, do you think that's had much of an effect on the firefighters in your area?
As far as change of calls, it's been evolving for a little while, and sometimes we go through periods where we see a lot of fires and you don't see fire for a little while, but you're doing a lot of overdose calls or something related to the medical side of it, and just seems to kind of be a little bit cyclical. But in the lower mainland here, definitely leading up to and prior to the pandemic, the opioid crisis really was impacting Abbotsford and our response, even to the point where we put another vehicle on the road specifically to assist with some of those calls. And so it did, and I think that was probably leading up to, and then having the pandemic hit, we actually slowed down right when I think everybody slowed down, business slowed down, school slowed down. I think everything, and our call volume actually probably decreased in the first 2 to 3 months of COVID by about 50%. But it's gone back up significantly. Over those first 2 or 3 months, it dropped. And I think because people weren't driving their vehicles and people weren't playing sports and, hurting their knee and requiring some medical assistance. People weren't leaving their homes, so they weren't leaving the pots on the stove and ending up with fire-related issues. So that slowed everything down. But then since that time, I don't know that there's been a specific change in the type of calls. I think people have just ramped back up and gotten back into life, and our call volume has gone back up to where it was, and some from the previous time.
So without maybe that blip in the middle, it would have been a steady growth, sort of, right?
I think it would have continued on just as it was. And I think that's just based on population growth for the most part. But I would say we're probably seeing more. The change in our staff is when it did slow down, we realized just how fast we were going prior to that. And now we're right back up to where we were. So it has taken its toll. And I can speak to that personally, it has taken its toll on us, to the point where we have a lot of people struggling. And I think from a clinical side of it, some of the therapists that have been involved, and the counselors, and the psychologists that have been involved, they're seeing an increased volume in people in the emergency services seeking help. I think that comes from probably years of conversations just like this one, where we start talking about it, and people start to, remove that stigma a little bit about, like, hey, did you hear so and so? No, I'm struggling with that too. Well, so is so and so, and all of a sudden those people start to come together, and we've raised our awareness around the effects of these calls that we've been going to. And I think COVID and the pandemic and the things that have come as a result of that are affecting a lot of people. Like, there were some people who their business was devastated. Their family situation took a toll. Their marriage took a toll. And I think we're still going to see a few more years of fallout from that. When you talk about some of the kids who maybe from a hockey standpoint or a sports standpoint for 10 years were training to get somewhere, and then all of a sudden that was taken away from them. Or, the things such as a high school graduation, all of a sudden, boom, wasn't there. And, it was something that they were looking forward to. And so I think we'll probably see in the next few years some people that are like, man, I missed out on that, and the effects that that's happening. But again, on the positive side of it, we are talking about it more, and I think we're trying to do more about it. And one, raise the awareness, and then two, put programs in place so people can go and get that help when they need it.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a good segue to my next question. What sort of formal supports are in place right now for in Abbotsford? And are you aware of anything province-wide or nationwide?
Yeah, we've got a lot going on. There is a lot of resources that are out there. And I think that's a good thing, because no one resource is a cure-all for everybody.
No, for sure.
I think that sometimes people, it may need to be pharmaceutical based, what they need in order to reestablish and get to a point where they can work on things. Some people may go a plant-based road, and some people may go with therapy-based, and some people may go faith-based. Whatever their combination of support, I think our role, and as I moved into the assistant chief operations, was to just provide those resources, not say, Clay, you need to go and do this one. No, Clay needs to do the work, and Clay needs the support in order to find what's going to work for him, and that combination of things. So in Abbotsford, I'm very proud of what we're doing here. And by no means, I'm just one part of a lot of work that's been done. We go back 20 plus years to one of our retired captains who brought our critical incident stress management team into Abbotsford, and had gone away to a conference and said, we need to start doing this here, and there was probably some people that, whatever, just go home and deal with it yourself. Don't, get all soft on us and everything.
Yeah, the prescription 20 years ago was a stiff shot, and if that didn't work, have another one.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's just not, it's not the way that it doesn't help. And we're seeing that. So, I'm grateful for how that program started, and that the funding was provided. Again, and sometimes it comes down to, we can't afford to do that. Well, really, can you not afford to do that? What's the cost if we don't do it? So that program was maintained, and we've had some people who have been champions of that, and carrying it on and moving it forward, and improving on it. It's not, as we had talked earlier, it's not an end game. You don't just say, okay, we put that in place and everybody's cured. No, it is, it's evolving. Our responses are evolving. The types of calls we're going to are changing, or increasing in call volume. So we need to make sure that we're improving those programs. So the critical incident stress management program and CISM, as it's shortened up, is utilized throughout North America by various departments to different levels and with different levels of success. Sometimes it comes out of a need because something traumatic has happened within that department or that community, or it just comes from somebody with an awareness to say, hey, let's put this in place and let's make sure that this is offered to our people. So one of the things that we try and do, and what I tried to do when I was on the trucks, is create those conversations following a call. We've got some protocols in place that, based on the type of call we went to, if it was a significant event, then that automatically creates this level of CISM involvement. You know, it could be at the crew level, it could be at the shift level, or it could be at the department level, depending on the number of people that were involved and the type of situation that it was. Example I can use personally of my own and the involvement and how it helped in having that was a significant motor vehicle incident that involved the death of an individual and the injury of another person. And our CISM team was at the hall by the time we got back from the call. We did a debriefing and we sat down and we spent some time going over how it affected us, what we were feeling. And it was open dialogue. There's no judgment. There's no, you know, saying get over it. And there's no shots of alcohol, right? Like it's just not the way it works anymore. So we had an opportunity to debrief, and then we were given an opportunity because they had already staffed our truck with other people. They asked if we wanted to go home or if we needed a little bit more time and what we wanted to do. And I think all of us are there to serve the community. We want to be there. I really didn't want to go home that day because I didn't have anybody to go home to. I wanted to be supported and around people that had just gone through a traumatic event with, and be able to share that burden and that load and that, you know, that recovery from that with them. So we all took about 45 minutes to an hour on our own time. Some people just sat quietly, listened to some music. Some other people went and worked out. There's 4 of us on the truck. We each kind of did our own thing, and then we came back together and got onto the truck. And for me, that helped. And I think as a crew, it was positive. But there was probably others that were still affected. Again, going back to how close you are to, maybe you knew somebody in that community, or maybe that was your neighborhood that you live in, or maybe you used to live there. And all those things can, when we're talking about triggers, being aware of your triggers is great. And having the resources in place to deal with that when it does come up. So our critical incident stress management team has been incredible in the work that it's done and helping us. And again, it's there for people. You can't drag them to it. And we've, our critical incident stress management team has actually put in place about 5 or 6 years ago. About 15 years ago, we've been doing an annual medical. So they were looking at physically how we were doing. You know, they're taking, you know, blood and urine and checking our EKG and doing all these things, our hearing. They were looking after the physical side of it. And our CISM team said, what about the mental side of it? What do we need to do? So about 5 yethey brought in a mental health, 2 mental health workers, and it was voluntary. You didn't have to go to it, but they brought it together with the medical side of it, looking after the physical side of it, and introduced the medical side of it. And they were hoping in the first year to have, you know, maybe 50 to 60% participation. And I think the first year was 85 to 90. Yeah. And so that told you right there that it was needed, wanted, and it was well used. And I would say that the percentage is probably still up there with that level. And personally, again, speaking, it has been incredible for me to be able to have that resource right from within work, and the city recognizing that this is important, and the department, you know, making it a part of its budget and a part of its planning. And then the crews and the people promoting it and then encouraging as young people come in. I would hope these people that are starting in, the last few years, it's the norm now. It's just what you do. Whereas when I started, it wasn't what you did. You dealt with it at home, or you dealt with it in some other way that wasn't always necessarily healthy.
Yeah. I've done a couple talks in middle schools and high schools, and the message is being propagated at that level. So when those students come into the workforce, it's going to be a normal thing to talk about, right? As opposed to the thing to avoid.
That's what we do, like on the other side of it, on the fire prevention side of it, if we identify maybe an issue with teenagers and fireworks, for example, and injuries and fires that are starting as a result of fireworks, we don't necessarily go and talk to the 17 and 18-year-olds where it's happening. We go and talk with the 13 and 14-year-olds before it starts happening. And identify the risks and identify some of the factors that can cause injuries or can cause significant devastation in a fire. So you identify the issue, and then you go get that target audience that's going to benefit from it a few years down the road. And then it just becomes the norm for those people. That's just the way that it is, entering the workforce or, going to whatever, going on to university, and they know a little bit more about fire safety just because we've approached them and we've target audience them when they were in high school or in middle school.
Yeah. And you mentioned a couple times that mental health care programs and supports are not an end game as the way they are right now, and I couldn't agree more. I think we have so much to learn about how our brains function, how our whole bodies function. I mean, we're a complex thing, and there's our physical health and our mental health that are not two independent things, right? But I think the idea that programs or supports that are in place right now are the result of all that we know right now. And as we learn more about psychology and psychiatry and how our brains work, all of that high level stuff that's kind of beyond me, the engineering guy. As we learn about a little more about how our bodies and our brains work, that's something that's going to be developed, and hopefully more as you said, more as a preventive than remedial, right?
In the fire service, we are reacting to fires and motor vehicle incidents and medical situations, but I think we can do some more preventative stuff by creating these programs and these opportunities for people to get that help. And I've enjoyed being able to put those things out there or support the ones that are out there, and then bring people to that area and without judgment, just support them. Getting over the idea that, well, I went and did that once and I'm all better, so you should be better now too because you went once. Well, no, it might take that person 10 times, or it might be ongoing and for a long, long time. So if we can get past the judgment of, well, so-and-so had to go and see a shrink, and, well, no, that's not what it's about, this long process and dealing with some stuff that, again, seeing things that nobody should see even once, and we're seeing it on a regular basis. And the effects that has, and the compounding effect if we're not dealing with it. We use an example of a cup full of rocks, and you put rocks in that are personal issues that are going on, or physical issues that you're dealing with, and mental issues. Eventually, that's going to flow over if you're not dealing with these things as they come along. If you're not dealing with physical injury, it's going to come back and it's going to hurt you and it's going to be worse. If you're not dealing with a mental issue, it's going to come back and somebody that tweaks their knee or hurts their back, maybe a month from now they're better, but another person could have the pretty close to the same injury. It might take them 6 months to a year. And we don't judge that person saying, well, you had a back injury, you should be better in a month because I was. No. So if you have something, if you've tweaked your brain, if you've tweaked something in your head, maybe it takes a month, but maybe it takes a year, or maybe it's ongoing, and that's fine. And by putting those programs in place, and then not passing judgment on somebody, that they are utilizing a resource that's there for them to help them to manage these things and to get through that time.
So just want to get into something a little personal. So you've been involved since pretty early in your career with mental health charities, mental health programs. What's the drive there? What's behind that? If you don't mind asking.
Yeah, no, great question. I think going back to when I was growing up, and I, mom and dad stayed married right through, brothers and sisters, opportunities growing up, and I just always very grateful for the opportunities that I had as I was growing up. And I always felt that I would do something where I would be giving back and helping out other people, because there was, it felt good. It feels good to do good. All those cliches that they have out there, it did feel good for me. Now, having said that, I also had a childhood trauma that occurred that I didn't speak about for a long time. It took me about 40 years to come forward and to even speak with my wife about being sexually assaulted when I was 13 years old. And that had, now I can see a tremendous effect on my behavior and how I dealt with things. And I always used helping people. I always think I turned into a little bit of a policeman. Maybe on the ice, I turned in a bit of a policeman. I thought I would be a cop at one time, and no offense to any police officer out there, I know what you do out there, but I'm sure glad it didn't work out that way for me. The fire service was just another way for me to give back and to support others, and to feel good doing that, and in a role in the community, giving back and working in my community has definitely been good for my mental health. I've told people before, find something you like to do and then get paid to do it. And I had the best of both of that. And, people say, oh, it's awesome. You see the big red fire truck and, all the role in the community. And I took that role seriously. Even when I was playing junior hockey in a small town in Saskatchewan, we were, people knew who the hockey players were, and there was a responsibility that came with that role. And that was the same thing as I moved into the fire service. I felt that there was a responsibility to give back to the community from a charitable standpoint. And it was fun doing it too. I'm not gonna lie. I got a lot of personal satisfaction out of the events and the commitment, and no different than you, Clay. I know that you're busy and doing all kinds of things. And I think you do get a satisfaction, and from a mental health standpoint, I think that's a positive thing. Managing it though too, not getting to the point where it's a burnout or it's overwhelming. I think we can find a happy medium, and it's one of the things that we really stress when new recruits are starting in Abbotsford, is to get involved in the community, get involved in the charitable work that's going on, get involved in the critical incident stress management team, and find something that you enjoy. We have an honor guard that goes to other line of duty death events, those type of things. Their commitment is to a certain level too, and ensuring that they're representing our department, but also honoring those people at those events, to, again, our critical incident stress management team, all those different, our occupational health and safety committee, each one of those doing something where they're giving back. And I think that's important, because there is some significant benefit to yourself as well in your own well-being.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you talked about stress. I think I've recognized for a long time, I kind of live on stress. I think I think growth or human existence just involves a certain amount of stress, right? I think without a little bit of stress, we may as well be a house plant or something. We all need a little bit of stress, but there's some people that bring on a lot more, and you're definitely in a line of work that brings on a lot of stress, and to add to that with the personal work that you do. But yeah, you also said, as you said, you've got to be able to recognize when you're getting close to a burnout and what that might look like, and know when to back off and say, I can't do that right now. Right.
I think you're 100% right. We all have stress, and we all have different levels of stress at different times of the year, or it could be even times of the day for some people.
Yeah.
And so being able to put some things in place to assist with that, to ensure you're getting good sleep. And the sleep is a big thing for people on shift, not just in emergency response, but any shift workers. You know, when you disrupt your sleep, I know I got more and more and more aware of it as I went longer in my career, the effects of not having sleep was having on me physically. And then that was playing out emotionally or mentally. And so being able to put some things in place to deal with the stress, if you're aware of it, you know, like, oh man, I got a really busy month coming up here. I know that I'm going to be very busy. Well, then maybe we don't need to go to that dinner party that night. You know, those people are still going to be our friends. I didn't coin it, and I don't think I came up with this, but it was an idea as we went through the pandemic and as we slowed down a little bit. I called it the 7-layer dip syndrome. And that was where you're like, because we weren't going out socializing, we weren't having to take a 7-layer dip. And I can use a situation where, like, my wife and I, in raising 2 daughters, and we're got to get so and so to this place, and we got to be here for this, but I got a meeting here, and I got to be, remember we're going to Clay's place for dinner, and we said we'd bring a 7-layer dip. And so now you got to run out and you got to get the ingredients, because you can't bring a store-bought. That, you know, everybody would know you brought a store-bought. So then you get all the ingredients and you get it all made, and then you rush to get over to Clay's place. And it's great because we wanted to see Clay for a long time, and then 3 other people have brought a 7-layer dip, and two of them are store-bought, because we all stressed. And so maybe we just phone up Clay and say, hey, I got a lot going on right now, and I can't make your dinner party. I really appreciate the invite, but we're just not going to be able to make it. And be okay with that, be understanding of that from, you know, the person inviting, to be able to say, hey, I appreciate the phone call, you know, let's get together another time when it slows down. And so personally being aware of what's going on, but then, you know, within the community that we're visiting with and we're hanging out with, that they're understanding that too.
That they're okay with that as well, right?
Sometimes life just gets busy, and it's okay if they don't bring the 7-layer dip to the party.
Nice. 7-layer dip. I think that sounds like a good place to end. I've got no more questions. Did you have anything that you thought you might want to say coming into this?
I think we covered it, and I really, really appreciate the opportunity again, because I go back to conversations, and we have known each other online, and have developed our relationship on that, and I think can respect each other in what we're doing. And I know you have so many things going on, and helping other people to achieve their goals, and climbing Mount Everest, to you know, highlighting the issues in the mental health and military responders and first responders and all those type of people. So I just really appreciate being able to come on here and keep this conversation going. And I know that sometimes it's not always going to connect with everybody, but it might connect with somebody. And it's not about changing the world. It's about changing our world. You know, it might just be your own, because you felt good about what you talked about, or the connection that you have, or maybe there's somebody listening that is just like, yeah, that comment, that made sense to me, and connect with something in there, and know that there's resources out there. But at the end of the day, the individual you need to do the work. Some of these programs, they're not going to come seeking you,
Right.
but when you do find them, it's going to be life-changing for you. And so you need to do that. And if it doesn't work out with the first therapist or the first program or whatever, go find another one. There will be one that connects with you, and hopefully and tomorrow ends up being a better day, and you share that conversation with another person, and we just keep that communication going on.
I think that the more people hear conversations involving mental health, the less uncomfortable they're going to be talking about it themselves with friends across the bar or at the office water cooler or across the floor of the legislature or the parliament, right? So keep the conversation going.
I just finished a great book on grief. I lost my father last summer, and I don't know that I fully dealt with that. And Megan Devine wrote this great book, and in it, she talked about that we've all gone through grief in some way, shape, or form, but we've all gone through it. It's our own personal one. So even if somebody else has struggled with a mental health issue, to say, well, yeah, that I had that too, and so just go see this person and you'll be okay, or just take this medication and you'll be okay. It doesn't work that way. We keep the doors open. When they come through the doors, we're helpful, we're supportive, and we allow them to have their own issue, and we help them to get through it. And just, again, the conversations and removing that stigma so that people are okay to say, I need a hand here.
For sure. Well, Stuart, thank you so much for being on People Talks. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Clay. I really appreciate it as well.
All right.